breathe easy.
News at the top and bottom of the hour. News Talk KVNU, Logan, 610 AM at 102.1 FM. Proud to be locally owned and operated by the Cache Valley Media Group. News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
And for Bill Walter on this Monday afternoon, I will feel like the news this hour brought to you by Bell Medical. Well, the child porn case against the 39-year-old Logan man has been moved out of the area after a judge transferred the case to a second district court. Adam Gregory Scavelin was arrested after law enforcement raided his home while serving a search warrant more than a year ago. Scavelin appeared last week in Logan's first district court. He had previously been charged with multiple felonies. Now, according to an arrest affidavit, Logan City Police began investigating Scavelin back in 2023 after investigators traced several files of child pornography being shared on a peer-to-peer network. Now, police tracked the material to an IP address at Scavelin's residence. They requested and later received a search warrant. Now, officers served the warrant to Scavelin's home, and after knocking and announcing loudly for several minutes, police reportedly forced themselves into the residence and located the suspect. Now, officers found numerous cell phones, laptops, and PC computers. Several hard drives appeared to have been removed from a nearby PC tower and hidden under a mattress, an affidavit for arrest had detailed. Now, police questioned Scavelin, who acknowledged to hearing officers knocking and announcing themselves at the door. He reportedly confessed to removing the hard drives and attempting to hide them. Investigators previewed the contents of the drives and discovered a large quantity of suspected child pornography. During last week's hearing, Judge Brian Cannell, the presiding district judge, noted how Scavelin's father, Greg Scavelin, is an attorney and regularly appears before all of the judges in the first district. He said it could make for a conflict of interest. Now, Scavelin remains out of jail after posting $10,000 bail. He could face up to life in prison if convicted. Well, coming up in just a minute, it was quite a tubing outing for a group in Provo after search and rescue teams were called to help them out when the weather got bad. I'll get to that forecast in just a minute, as overall we've had really nice weather for today. Clouds came in this afternoon, brought with it a chance of some isolated thunderstorms, but didn't see any rain outside the KVNU studios. And now, as we head through the rest of the afternoon, it's going to remain clear tonight. Temperatures dropping into the low 60s. Tomorrow will be into the low 90s with more sunny weather. And it looks like sunny skies are going to continue Wednesday through Friday, as temperatures will stay right around the mid 80s with overnight temperatures around the mid to high 50s. Saturday and Sunday is when we'll start to see a little cooler weather with temperatures in the 70s. Well, nearly a dozen people were rescued from an island in the Provo River over the weekend. The people were tubing Saturday afternoon when they began to get concerned about water conditions, according to the Utah County Sheriff's Office. At around 2:45 Saturday, search and rescue teams, along with neighboring fire departments, responded to assist. Personnel from the fire department reportedly waded into the water to rescue the tubers. The Sheriff's Office advised that those who head into the outdoors to always consider the weather as to whether or not they should continue with their outings. They also said that if conditions ever get beyond control, remember you can always call for help. And a man who did call for help was rescued along with his 5 dogs from a Utah canyon last week after becoming stranded over several days in the La Salle Mountains. The 64-year-old man told search and rescue in Grand County that he and his hunting dogs had headed into the mountains on last Monday, but his dogs became trapped on a ledge. Now, early the next day, the unidentified man returned to the ledge near the Adobe Mesa area to retrieve the dogs. However, on their way down, he ended up becoming stranded as well. Now, at that point, surrounded by towering walls 100 feet above him, the man activated a satellite device to request help. A search and rescue helicopter was able to come in with a technical rope rescue to get the man out of the canyon and then later return to get the dogs safely out of the canyon, and everyone turned out to be okay. And for Bill Walter, I'm Will Feelwright, and that's your Monday afternoon news update.
If you are like most local residents, you have a huge influx of creepy crawlers invading your home. Right now, that nasty elm seed beetle is all over northern Utah. We have a solution for you. Call Logan Extermination today for a full exterior spray. Their full exterior spray includes foundation and eaves and will kill those nasty spiders, wasps, box elder bugs, and the new nuisance, elm seed beetles. Call Logan Extermination today for details. 752-8450.
Treatment areas vary. Call for a quote today.
When news breaks, we break in. News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
Hi everyone, it's Congressman Blake Moore here. One of my top priorities in Congress is addressing our crippling national debt, which has surpassed $35 trillion for the first time in American history. For the sake of the next generation's ability to achieve the American dream, Congress must take action to rein in our government spending and more efficiently and responsibly spend our federal resources. I'm working hard in Congress to craft policy proposals that lower our spending and deficits. On the House Budget Committee, we introduced our budget resolution for fiscal year 2025. According to the Budget Committee majority, this resolution proposes no new taxes, grows the economy over 3 times faster than the debt, balances the budget in 10 years, and much more. We've also passed through committee common sense legislation that would require transparency to the American people about the state of our nation's finances so big government can be held accountable. It is an honor to bring Utah's sound fiscal policy to Washington, and I will continue to fight for the American family as we seek to give our children a better economic future. Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives.
This is Cache County Fire Chief Rod Hammer. Due to current and predicted weather conditions coupled with extremely dry vegetation in northern Utah, the state forester has determined that measures must be taken to prevent the ignition of forest and rangeland fires. The following acts are prohibited in unincorporated private and state lands. First, no open fires of any kind except within established public facilities, in improved campgrounds, picnic areas, or in permanently constructed fire pits at private homes where running water is present. Second, no smoking except within an enclosed vehicle, trailer, or building, a developed recreation site, or while stopped in an area that is paved or free from dry vegetation. Third, no discharging or using any fireworks, tracer ammunition, or other pyrotechnic devices, including exploding targets. Fourth, no cutting, welding, or grinding metal in areas of dry vegetation. And fifth, no operating a motorcycle, chainsaw, ATV, or other small internal combustion engine without an approved and working spark arrestor. Please help us by doing your part to prevent costly and dangerous wildfires.
Weather changes are tough on your transmission. As we move to colder winter weather, AMCO Transmission invites you to bring your vehicle in for preventative maintenance before the snow flies. Have a diesel pickup, Cummins, Duramax, or Power Stroke? AMCO in Logan is your transmission specialist, and they promise to get you in quickly. For over 50 years, AMCO Total Car Care has been experts in repair for transmission, brakes, tune-ups, and more. Find your local AMCO. 75 East, 2000 North, 752-1940.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People, Hour 2 of today's show. Monday, August 19th. I talked about it a lot already in Hour 1, and minutes before we wrapped up Hour 1, they announced the details. The legislature had been rumored, now it's confirmed, to plan to meet in quote-unquote emergency session this Wednesday to possibly, it was rumored, propose a second constitutional amendment for the same ballot where there already is one proposed by the legislature this fall. So that would be 2 proposed constitutional amendments by the legislature for voters to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to. And this will mark the 6th year in a row, or 6th cycle rather in a row, that they have asked us to amend the Constitution. I said as I wrapped up my rant in Hour 1, it's gotten out of hand, and I think at this point, voters, I hope, the first one they asked us for was the ability to call themselves into emergency session, and that's exactly what they're now going to do on Wednesday. Before that power was given to them via constitutional amendment, they had to consult with the governor. The governor's office and the legislature had to agree that something was an emergency. Now, Stuart Adams and Mike Schultz, Speaker of the House and Senate President, because of a constitutional amendment voters approved, the first one, 6 cycles ago, now they can just call anything an emergency and call themselves into special session. There was a time when the legislature really only met for 45 days a year between end of January and mid-March. Really. And now it seems like they're in special session every 90 days throughout the rest of the year, or every 30 days throughout the rest of the year. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but not much. This is a quasi full-time legislature at this point. And maybe we all want to go there. I don't know. I don't. But either way, I'm really frustrated by this. And I tell you, the press release I got on this at the end of the hour one is just insulting. The subject of the press release, lawmakers to convene to restore and strengthen the voter-led initiative process. Yeah, that's not what's happening here, folks. What's happening here is a court told the legislature they violated the state constitution. And now the legislature wants you to change the Constitution so that isn't true anymore. I'm not exaggerating a bit. That is literally what the legislature is going to discuss on Wednesday. Now, the legislature can't amend the Constitution without you, the voter. They can propose putting a constitutional amendment proposal on the ballot. Now, there already is one. Last session, they debated and voted yay to put a constitutional amendment question on the ballot already. This one is to give them more power in how they can spend the income tax money they collect from you. They don't like that there are guardrails on how they can spend that money. They want you to take those guardrails apart so they can do whatever they want. And now they're going to ask you on the same ballot to also amend the state constitution so that when the Supreme Court said that they violated the state constitution by ignoring the will of the voters regarding Prop 4 and the independent redistricting committee that ballot initiative created, which the legislature ignored, the Supreme Court said, that's unconstitutional, folks. The state constitution clearly has a provision for voters through the initiative process to make law or to repeal law, which it's been used for as well. And that is in the state constitution, and you can't just ignore it. If you do just ignore it, as you did with Prop 4 and the independent redistricting committee it created, you can be challenged in court, the Supreme Court said, and if you can't show justified common cause, which is legalese for the good of the state and all of its people, if you can't prove that you ignored the voters for the good of the state, then the court will rule against you if you change a ballot initiative and can't show it was for good reason other than you could. And the legislature lost its mind. When this ruling came out, Stuart Adams put out a press release, I kid you not, that literally said in the first sentence, total chaos. I'm not exaggerating. That's how he described this Supreme Court ruling, which was literally the Supreme Court slapping their hands and saying, no, you can't ignore voters. If voters, so as I said in hour one, getting a ballot initiative on the ballot is difficult. It requires hundreds of thousands of signatures, and they have to be a certain percentage of each of all the signatures have to come from, I think, 25 of the 29 counties in the state. It's designed to be hard, and it should be hard, because don't get me wrong, no one wants to live in a state that functions on direct democracy, where everything is a ballot initiative. You can't raise or lower taxes without a ballot initiative. You can't spend transportation money without a ballot initiative. Can you imagine? And long-term planning would be out the window. That's one thing the legislature does, I think, a pretty good job of, is long-term planning. What they don't do a good job of is being humble and remembering that voters are smart. Voters are so smart that when voters approved legalization of medical marijuana in this state, they designed a system that the legislature ignored, and the legislature made up their own. It turns out that was a huge mess, And the legislature quietly, the next year, after wasting a year of everyone's time and money, defaulted back to what voters approved. Turns out voters knew what they were doing. With Medicaid expansion, same thing. Voters approved the expansion of Medicaid here in the state of Utah by a wide margin in every county. The legislature ignored them and wrote their own plan for expanding Medicaid. Turns out their plan was illegal and was shot down by 4 different courts before the legislature had to eat crow quietly again and revert back to what voters approved in the first place. There's a pattern here. You see this? The legislature is out over its skis. They are so convinced that they are not only the smartest people in the room, but the only smart people in the room, that when the Supreme Court of the state said, folks, what you just did was unconstitutional, they lost their minds. Total chaos. The Senate president said, I quote, it was embarrassing. So now, of course, this rumor is now a factual reality. They announced just minutes before hour 1 of today's show ended, they will meet on Wednesday. The purpose of this quote-unquote emergency session, which, again, they can call themselves into anytime they want to call something an emergency because we gave them that power via constitutional amendment. I'm hammering this because it's gone too far. There is no way that Utah has been a state this long with basically the same constitution and everything has worked pretty well. And now suddenly in the last 6 years, we've got to amend the Constitution every year? I think what's happening here is we have a Senate president and a House Speaker who are tired of sharing power. They don't want to have to be held accountable by the governor and the veto pen, so they took that power from the governor. The governor can still veto, but it's a lot easier for them to override the veto. The governor can still weigh in, but they don't really have to listen. Now they're doing the same thing to the court, including the state Supreme Court. They're basically saying, sure, you ruled that what we did was unconstitutional. Go ahead. We'll just get voters to change the Constitution. We'll make it legal. That's literally what's happening here. But look at how they're selling it in the press release. Again, lawmakers to convene to restore and strengthen the initiative process. Doesn't that sound great? Well, here's what they're throwing in. To hide what they really want, which is the power to ignore voters. When voters get a ballot initiative on the ballot, and when voters approve that ballot initiative as law, a constitutionally enshrined process, the legislature wants to be able to ignore that, to ignore voters, because they're not as smart as lawmakers, even though, again, they've proven again and again they are. And to hide that simple fact that that's all this is about, here's what they're throwing in. On Wednesday, they're going to debate prohibiting foreign entities from contributing to ballot initiatives or referenda. Great. You know, you could do that in the legislative session coming up in January. There isn't a ballot initiative up and running. There's none to donate to for a foreign entity. You could pass a law in January and make this a thing. You could have passed a law in the last legislative session banning foreign entities from contributing to ballot initiatives. You could have done it earlier this year. You could do it in the next session. That could simply be, this doesn't require an emergency session. Second thing they're doing to try and bury what it is they are really up to here. They want to add 20 days to collect signatures to the referendum process. Oh, that's nice of them. They're doing that because they're saying, look, if you give us our way, if you make it so we can ignore you, we'll give you 20 extra days to collect signatures to get a ballot initiative on the ballot in the first place. That's not very meaningful. If in the same constitutional amendment we're giving them the power to completely ignore ballot initiatives, it makes no sense. But they're throwing that in there in the hopes that people will go, that's very nice of them. And finally, they get to what they're really about. But look at how they're wording this. We want to restore and strengthen the longstanding practice that the voters, the legislature, and local bodies may amend or repeal legislation. Okay, sounds good, right? Problem is, it's already working that way. What the state Supreme Court said simply was if the legislature repeals or ignores, the word I'm using, a ballot initiative approved by a majority of Utah voters, which the Constitution says is a legal process for making law in the state of Utah, and the legislature has, rightly, past legislatures have made it difficult to do. It should be difficult to do, and it is. And I don't support people who say it should be easier. If that is put on the ballot and voters approve it, the legislature wants to be able to ignore it. Right now, this final provision they say they have to meet in emergency session for on Wednesday, restore and strengthen this longstanding practice that the voters, the legislature, and local bodies may amend or repeal legislation. It sounds like they want to share power, right? It already works that way. The power is already shared. Already. What the legislature wants to do is propose a constitutional amendment worded this way in the language on the ballot so that it doesn't sound like they're doing what they're really doing, which is giving themselves the ability to completely ignore future ballot initiatives that might pass with voter approval. Because that's the only thing that happened here, is the court told them they couldn't do that. A court said, if you're going to greatly rewrite a ballot initiative or completely repeal a ballot initiative approved by voters, that decision by the legislature is open to a court challenge. And if the legislature can't, in court, show that there was a justifiable common good need, which is legalese for the good of the state. Because, okay, here's a hypothetical situation where the legislature might legitimately want to repeal a ballot initiative. Say voters in Utah, because this happened in California, and this is why I say it should be difficult to make a ballot initiative happen. So in California, a ballot initiative that lent itself to populism and people like, oh, that sounds great, let's do it. Basically said, you could only increase taxes if 2/3 of the legislature agreed to do so. And everybody saw that on their ballot, and they're like, oh, yeah, definitely keep my taxes low, right? Who doesn't want that? But what nobody understood and what the initiative backers weren't being honest about was that meant that it took 2/3 of a majority to make a property tax spending change to build a road or repair a road or repair a bridge. It basically left California in a mess. And the reason this happened is it was super easy to get a ballot initiative on the ballot in California. They've since changed that smartly. So again, I think it's smart that it is extremely difficult to do this in Utah. It should be difficult. You don't want your entire state run by the whims of popular opinion that change from year to year, just like the most popular band on a pop music station does. That's bad. You've got to have room for institutional knowledge and long-term planning. And the legislature is probably, though flawed, always going to be the best body for that type of long-term planning. So in no way is this an endorsement of those who take it a little further and say it should be easier for the people to make the law. No, it should be difficult. It should be easy for people to vote for representatives to go meet in a session and make the law. It should be very easy. I still think it should be a national holiday, election day, state and federal. But I also think it should be difficult for voters to get an initiative on the ballot and make law themselves. I think that's a good balance. It already works that way. It is difficult here in Utah. Voters can repeal laws through the referenda process. The legislature can repeal laws through their own voting process as a legislative body. Local bodies may amend and repeal legislation through various referenda processes. It already works this way, and the legislature says that's why they have to meet on Wednesday, to make it work this way, a way that it already works. Now, what they're meeting for on Wednesday is they're going to vote on putting a constitutional amendment proposal on the ballot next to the one that's already going to be there that they asked for last year or to be on the ballot. Now they're going to meet in an emergency session on Wednesday to put a second constitutional amendment on the same ballot. 6th cycle in a row, they've asked us to amend the state constitution to give them more power. And this one is basically going to say, okay, the court says it's unconstitutional for us to ignore voters via the ballot initiative process when one is approved. The Supreme Court says you can't do that. It says if you do that, it can be challenged in court. And if you can't show that it was for the good of the state, if you don't have receipts, basically, if you just wanted to repeal it because you were mad voters approved it, which is what happened basically with the independent redistricting one, Proposition 4, you're going to lose in court. That's all the Supreme Court said. Total chaos, the Senate president responded. And now this. So what's going to happen on Wednesday? Technically, they'll vote on this. They'll vote to do it. And then at a certain point, language will have to be drafted up. It will be as deceptive as what I've just read to you. It'll have some things in there that people will read because they do this on purpose. They'll read it and you'll think, "Whoa, who would be against that?" But make no mistake, what they're doing here is giving themselves more power and asking you to do it, ironically, in an emergency session that a few years ago they asked you to give them the power to call, and we shouldn't have given it to them. Once the Constitution is changed, it's rarely changed back. And I really think it's gone too far at this point. I hope that the result here is the legislature, for getting out over their skis like this, I hope both constitutional amendments fail. Not because they're good or bad ideas, but because somebody needs to tell the legislature to stop. It's honestly, I've never seen a legislature, this iteration of the legislature, in contrast to the Becky Lockhart years, the Wayne Niederhauser years, even the Greg Hughes years, where there was respect for the process, where there was respect for the other branches of government that are there as a balancing check, the governor's office, the judiciary. This legislature under Stuart Adams and Brad Wilson, now Mike Schultz, is so full of itself. It's unbelievable. And any suggestion that they have to share any power with anyone else, including the voters who elected them in the first place, just really seems to make them mad. And so now, again, they'll ask us twice on the same ballot this time, that's new, to amend the state constitution to give them more power. 6th cycle in a row they've asked for a constitutional amendment. I really hope voters are waking up to what's going on here. And again, this has nothing to do with whether you agree or disagree with where the legislature's at. I happen to agree with them. Like I said, I think ballot initiatives should be very difficult. And I think if the legislature has good reason to repeal or rewrite a ballot initiative, but even if it was passed by a majority of voters, they have to have the power to do that. They have to. I fully support them on that. What I object to is that they want all of the checks to be stripped out here because a court told them if they do that, they'd better be able to defend their decision to ignore the voters in court. That's a reasonable check on legislative power. Very reasonable. And yet, instead, they're just going to ask us to take that very, very important provision out of the Constitution. And they'll word it in a way that makes you feel like you're doing something good. This isn't good. And the legislature really needs to be taken down a peg or two. I don't think the governor's going to do it. He's already showed that he's kind of scared of them. The judiciary just did it, and they said, okay, well, we'll just rewrite the Constitution then, since you said we couldn't do that constitutionally. I'm not exaggerating. That's literally what we're watching play out here. So anyway, special session on Wednesday. It'll be fun, I'm sure. And I really hope this is the time the legislature went too far and voters send them a message on the ballot this fall. But we'll see. The other 5 times they've asked, we've just given them more power. We'll be back after these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Jason, in for Bill Walter. I'm Will Feelright with your news update brought to you by Napa Auto Parts. Well, firefighters were able to get the help from aircraft and gain the upper hand on a large wildfire that burned over the weekend just west of Pocatello, Idaho. It caused widespread evacuations and temporarily shut down a section of Interstate 86. Now, it's believed that the blaze was caused by lightning at around 4:30 Saturday afternoon. Now, the flames quickly spread due to strong winds that were blowing through the area. Authorities said they expected that the fire would be completely contained by about Saturday night. The fire had ignited south of the Pocatello Regional Airport and it scorched about 650 acres. Now, 50 homes west of Pocatello had to be evacuated as a precaution, but in addition to saving those homes from the blaze, firefighters also said they were able to keep an Idaho Power substation from being damaged in the wildfire. Well, a 32-year-old man has been sentenced to 3 months in jail for sexting with an undercover police officer who was posing as a teenage girl a year ago. James Christoph Vaterlaus said that he had made a huge error in judgment that had resulted in him losing 2 jobs and his family. Vaterlaus was sentenced last week in Logan's 1st District Court. He had previously pleaded guilty to enticing a minor, a second-degree felony. Now, according to prosecutors, Vaterlaus began messaging the officer with the Logan City Police Department in June of last year. The undercover officer was using an online mobile chat app identified as the chats continued. Vaterlaus arranged to meet up with the officer for sex, but never showed up. Now, he created several other user accounts to continue messaging the officer and requesting time to meet, but failed to appear for a second plan. Vaterlaus admitted to using the chat app to communicate
clean up your looks with all the lies in the books to make a citizen out of you. Because they sleep with a gun.
Judge Brian Cannell said he appreciated Vaterlaus's efforts to change. He ordered the defendant to serve 90 days in jail, giving credit for 1 day previously served. He also prohibited him from having any unauthorized access to the home from a 10-day trip in Italy and Croatia, which they had won 3 games played. And during what was an equally successful tour of Italy, the USU's Kane College of the Arts Jazz Orchestra spent 10 days in July, where they performed 5 festivals. Now, through a rigorous audition process, 20 top-tier students were selected for the tour. It was directed by Associate Professor Madison. Each concert also featured the music of the Aggie Music Project, a quartet of distinguished USU professors. Professor Madsen said after each show, the students had the opportunity to spend time talking and interacting with the audiences in a mixture of broken English and also Italian.
You keep saying
through the rest of the evening, as temperatures tonight going to drop into the high 50s, low 60s overnight. Then tomorrow we'll be back into the low 90s with sunny skies continuing through the rest of the week. As we head through Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, temperatures expected to be around the 80s and then 70s, a little cooler weather for the weekend. I'm Will Feelright for KVNU News.
This is a special report from ABC News, the Democratic National Convention. I'm Chuck Sievertson.
We hereby call the in-person portion of the 49th Quadrennial Democratic National Convention to order.
Democratic National Committee Chair Jamie Harrison and Convention Chair Minion Moore outside the United Center in Chicago. Outside, Gaza war protesters and ABC's Matt Gutman. The protesters forced themselves through an opening in the outer security barrier.
Police with riot gear are squeezing protesters from both sides, forcing them out of these breaches. They're physically pushing them and camera people through that breach.
Several arrests. President Biden later tonight will be introduced by his daughter Ashley. U.S. intelligence officials say a joint statement says Iran was responsible for the hack of Donald Trump's presidential campaign. Iran denying it. This is ABC News.
Thank
Thank you for calling Cardall's Insulation. How can we make your home more comfortable today?
Is your home hot? Does your air conditioner run nonstop? Are you spending a fortune on energy? Call Cardall's Insulation, 755-5012. From attics and walls, garages and basements, new homes and commercial construction, Cardall's is the name thousands of homeowners, builders, and remodelers trust. Stay cool all summer and save money on your utility bills. In fact, you may qualify for a tax credit up to $1,200. Cardall's Insulation, 755-5012.
News Talk 610 AM, 102.1 FM, KVNU. Discount Tire.
So much more than a tire store.
It's finally summer, and with the sun comes a lot of fun. Save now on all RV, ATV, and boat trailer tires going on at Discount Tire's 48th anniversary sale. Any tire purchase also enters you to win one of their weekly prizes valued at over $2,500. You heard right, over $2,500 in prizes are up for the taking. Get the lowest tire prices anywhere, guaranteed, in-store or online. Low on cash? No problem. Utilize 12 months no-interest financing, no credit check financing, or layaway. Don't let summer or Discount Tire's 48th anniversary sale pass you by. Make your tire and service reservations online anytime at webtires.net or stop by Discount Tire, 885 North Main in Logan, 110 South Highway 165 in Providence, and 728 South Main in Smithfield.
Discount Tire.
So much more than a tire store.
Are you in need of excellent surgical care? Budge Clinic General Surgery offers the future of surgery with state-of-the-art robotic-assisted procedures. From cancer treatments to surgical needs, they've got you covered. Call Budge Clinic General Surgery today, 435-716-1950, to schedule a consultation and experience the best possible outcome. Trust Drs. Anderson, Marshall, McKenna, and Peterson, the experts at Budge Clinic General Surgery, helping people live the healthiest lives possible.
Fatigue, headaches, weight gain, hair loss, insomnia, anxiety, intestinal issues, joint pain. Do you suffer from consistent symptoms like these, and no matter how many doctors you see, things still don't improve? Whether you have a thyroid problem, an autoimmune issue, or chronic symptoms, we can help. We do complex medical testing and blood work to find the mechanisms driving your symptoms. And then we create a plan to improve each one while we teach you the tools to stay on top of your health. We've been helping patients just like you for almost 14 years now. We see patients from all over the world, and we have an office here in St. George, Logan, Salt Lake, Farmington, and Springville. You aren't crazy, you aren't lazy. It's not just because you're getting older, and these symptoms are not normal. No matter what symptoms you have, you shouldn't feel this way, and we can help. Don't accept Band-Aid answers.
Call Red River Health and Wellness at 855-55-RIVER.
Call Red River today.
I'm Larry Gelwigs, the getaway guru for Morris, Columbus Travel and Celebrity Cruises, with the biggest cruise promotion of the year, with huge discounts off your cruise fare and free amenities. Sail the 7 seas in luxury with Celebrity Cruises and Morris Columbus Travel. And for the best travel deals on the planet, give us a call at Morris Columbus Travel.
Come on and get away. Morris Columbus.
Today's hearing aid technology can improve not only your life, but the lives of the people who care about you. Once again, you'll be able to hear the reason for their laughter and understand conversations. Dr. Paul Danes will customize a hearing improvement program to meet your unique requirements, whatever they are. Call Dr. Danes for an appointment at 753-HERE and let him show you how.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Hey, it's Glenn Beck. Join Lyle Boss on his Safe Money radio show. He talks about how you can get substantial bonuses on your retirement accounts and so much more. You also can call Lyle right now for his new Safe Money Miracle Book and a complimentary appointment for an inflation-proof audit of your current retirement plan. Call Lyle Boss, president of Boss Financial, 855-355-SAFE. That's 855-355-7233.
Join Lyle Boss and Safe Money Radio, Saturdays at 10 a.m. on KVNU.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. message from a listener during the news break there that simply read, "Wow, you're mad." Yeah, I'm not mad so much as I am a little bit disgusted, and after reading the press release from the legislature today, insulted, as you all should be. There's nothing more offensive to me than a lawmaker, an elected official. Let me put it that way. There's nothing more offensive to me than an elected official that believes they're now, granted, elected officials have access to lobbyists and institutional resources and more, in which they can be very smart on some issues. Don't get me wrong. But an elected official who believes individually or as a member of the House or the state Senate collectively that they're smarter than voters and don't need to listen to voters, I don't know. This is all just a bunch of snake eating itself here. The lawmakers are still burned because in 2018 there were 4 ballot initiatives and they all passed, and they were all issues the legislature had refused to even debate because they didn't think anybody cared. They weren't listening to their constituents, obviously. So they kind of brought it on themselves. And then they were mad about that, so they tried to make it harder to get a ballot initiative on the ballot in the first place, which I actually supported. It should be hard. But they were doing it because they're being petty. And then they kept asking us over and over and over again for the last 6 cycles to amend the Constitution to give them more power. And now they're doing it again, twice on one ballot. This will be a first this fall. First time in the history of this state, the voters will be asked to amend the state constitution twice on one ballot. Previous to the last 6 cycles, where this legislature, being led by Stuart Adams and Mike Schultz, has asked every cycle for 6 cycles in a row, previous to that, we hadn't amended the state constitution since the mid-90s. And previous to that, it was the mid-70s. And previous to that, it was the 1930s. And now all of a sudden, in the last 6 cycles, 12 years, 6 election cycles, we're supposed to believe that the Constitution is just so flawed, we've just got to change it every time. No. This legislature is over its skis, and voters need to send it a message. So again, I'm not really mad. I might sound mad. I just hope voters wake up to this. This is unjustifiable, and it is a legislature that is a bit too full of itself. It's time for them to be knocked down a few pegs, some humility, if you will. And voters can send them that message by shooting down both constitutional amendments. They really, really want the first one. This one that they're going to add to the ballot on Wednesday with a vote in emergency session, because, they can call anything an emergency, through power we gave them via constitutional amendment, the first one they asked for. That's why I say snake eating itself here. They ignored constituents. It led to a bunch of ballot initiatives. They were mad about that. They tried to change some things. That blew up in their face. So then the courts got involved, and the courts finally said, no, you can't just ignore the voters. And now they're mad about that. This all could have been avoided if they just were listening to the voters in the first place. And if they weren't so convinced, they are always the smartest people in the room, and no one can tell them what to do. Not the governor, not the state Supreme Court, nobody. Don't you know who they are? It's just offensive. So I'm not mad. I'm kind of more disgusted with our state legislature at this point. And again, this has nothing to do with the merits of all of this. Personally, I'm not a fan of independent redistricting committees because I think they get hijacked in a different political way. I'm more of a fan of keeping the pressure on elected officials when redistricting is happening every 10 years to be honest and to show their work. And when they don't, call them out on it. That's my preferred way. Independent committees, I think, have their own flaws, so I'm not a huge fan. But the voters approved it by a majority, and that's constitutional for them to do, and the legislature can't just ignore it. And that's all the Supreme Court said. And now they's mad. And so Wednesday, emergency session, total chaos. The Senate president called it when the Supreme Court ruled a couple of weeks ago. They're going to ask us as voters to change the Constitution to make what they did constitutional after the Supreme Court of the state said it wasn't. It's just insulting. Anyway, moving on. now spent a good chunk of the show on this. I didn't plan this. I didn't think they'd announce it today. So I spent a good part of the first hour, and then right at the end of the first hour, they announced the details. So we started hour 2 with it again. But I really want to get to this because this blows me away. And I don't know if this is a trend that holds or just a thing that's happening now because of home prices in general. But Redfin, if you're not familiar with Redfin, the easiest way to describe them, this is a news resource for real estate agents, I guess is the easiest way to put it. This is a private company and incorporated. So this isn't some, nonprofit newsroom or anything like that, but their goal is educated and knowledgeable real estate agents. And so they do these studies, and the studies are very credible, and they put a lot of money and resources into them because, they have a reputation to uphold too. So that's a little background on Redfin if you've never heard of them. If you've been anywhere near real estate, you've heard of Redfin. But this is what they had to say. In Utah, a record number of homes in 6 cities. Well, let me phrase it this way. The Redfin report shows that there are now 6 cities in Utah where $1 million home price is the average. Now, that's not completely out there, right? Been that way for a few years now in Park City. But here are the other areas. A total of 6 cities where the average home price in Utah is now $1 million. Camas, Alta, Granite, Alpine, West Mountain, and, of course, Park City. That's so 6 of the U.S.'s total 550 what are known as $1 million cities. These are cities where the average home price is going to run you $1 million for, and by average home, I mean average home. We're not talking home prices for mansions here. We're not talking home prices for, some sort of specially designed smart home. No, these are average homes, but the average price is $1 million for homes in that city. And again, that's Camas, Alta, Granite, Alpine, West Mountain, and Park City. Park City's been there a while, but now they're joined by 5 others. And again, in the U.S., there are 550 of these cities per a recent Zillow report. So the effect on this is honestly bad. Or the effect of this, sorry. Because what this means is how many people are budgeted comfortably for a $1 million home price. Now consider that these 6 cities are way above, where like Cache Valley is. Although, it's getting up there in Cache Valley. What this means is basically millions of people around the country are being priced out of the homeownership market. Now, markets have a tendency to correct eventually, so sure. The bubble will burst. Hopefully it's not a 2008 economic crisis kind of burst, but we'll see. Honestly, the rest of this report reads like a dystopian sci-fi novel. 70% of people under the age of 35 in America right now in this survey said it is unrealistic for them to buy a home. 70%. 25 and under, 87% said they not only didn't feel it was realistic for them to be able to afford a home, they'd given up planning on it. Gen Z. So 87% of those 25 and under right now in the United States say not planning on owning a home because it just doesn't realistically factor in. No matter how much money you make graduating college or how great of a career you get into right out of high school or after a trade or vocational school, nobody is planning on buying a home at these prices. That's basically what Redfin reports in this survey and analysis. Millennials, again, who cannot afford a home, period. So in millennials, 35 and under, who felt it was unrealistic for them to be able to afford a home, 70%. But the actual numbers are barely lower than that. Millennials who actually can't realistically afford a home based on median wages and median home prices, 62% can't afford a home. 1 in 4 don't believe home ownership is a good investment anymore. And 1 in 3 don't believe owning property itself is an important part of living in the United States or their state. And again, this is happening just because of the prices. This isn't some ideological shift. This isn't some, political campaign that's won out. No, it's just people are looking at the prices and going, no. And the other thing that makes this difficult is despite, the pressure on the legislature or even the federal government to do something about this, they're pretty limited on what they can do. They're not limited on what they can do, but do we want to go some of those places? Because, the federal government can make homes really cheap by next week, but it's going to require doing some pretty not ever tried before in this country things. And I don't think that's going to be politically popular or a good idea. So within the constraints of our Constitution, the federal government can only do so much. States can only do so much. This paragraph blew me away from the report. Home prices, insurance, and mortgage rates have shot up so much that many people are either priced out of the market or wary of committing to such a high monthly payment in the first place. The end result, homeownership is no longer a core part of the American dream for anyone under the age of 35, not driven by political ideology or even partisan preferences, but driven by home prices alone in every state and city. Last year, the whole country has seen an uptick in $1 million homes for sale in the most populated cities, with the exception of Austin, Houston, Texas, and Indianapolis, Indiana. Simply put, the housing shortage is a big issue. There are not enough homes available for the demand. So again, the whole cause here is we haven't been building enough homes. But look around Cache Valley. This is going to require some zoning changes. This is going to require some building up as opposed to sprawl. This is going to require some things that are going to lead to some really loud public meetings at city councils throughout the valley. But 6 cities in Utah now have an average home price of $1 million, not because they're gargantuan, what you think of when you think $1 million homes. No, just because that's how much the prices have gone up. That doesn't go anywhere good. We'll be back right after this.
Hi, John Weiss here. According to the Chinese zodiac, this year's the year of the dragon. But according to Heritage Auto, this summer is the summer of Ram. That's because right now, when you purchase a 2024 Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cab, you can get $7,500 total cash allowance, plus no monthly payments for 90 days. See dealership for details. So what are you waiting for? Make this the summer of Ram. Visit us today at Heritage Auto, your hometown dealer with the biggest deals.
Whether it's a sports injury, joint pain, or any orthopedic concern you have, Alpine Orthopedic Specialists has always been committed to excellence for your orthopedic needs. Thank you for voting Alpine Orthopedic Specialist our gold winner in orthopedics for Best of Northern Utah 2024. The entire team of doctors and staff at Alpine Orthopedics is dedicated to you and your health and will continue to provide the highest quality treatment tailored to your needs. Now offering walk-in urgent care for orthopedic injuries. For more information on Alpine Orthopedic Specialists, visit alpineortho.com.
If you've lost someone to suicide, you know the feelings: isolation, abandonment, anger. But you should also know that you're not alone. 91% of Utahns say they've been impacted by the loss of a family member, friend, coworker, or neighbor to suicide. And there is support for those left behind. Find resources and connect with others who have similar experiences by visiting liveonutah.org. September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Learn what you can do at liveonutah.org. Supported by the Strong Auto Group.
Join us each week for Music and the Spoken Word, featuring the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, the longest-running continuous weekly network broadcast in the world. Each episode features modern and traditional arrangements of spiritual, classical, and contemporary music and a timely, inspiring message. Truly an uplifting program that will have you returning to each week. Music and the Spoken Word with the Tabernacle Choir.
Sunday mornings at 8 and again in the afternoons at 6 on News Talk KVNU.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. I'm going to wrap up. This has been a very rant-filled hour, 2 hours of radio here, and I apologize. Kind of. I mean it, though. I hope voters really wake up on this one. The legislature is too full of itself, and this doesn't end anywhere good. You have to have these balances and checks between the executive, legislative, and judicial branches, and our legislature has forgotten that. And these two constitutional amendments, 6th time in a row on the ballot, they've asked us to amend the Constitution. After not doing it since the mid-90s and the mid-70s before that and the 1930s before that, suddenly 6 cycles in a row, it's just urgent we change the state constitution. I'm pretty worked up. You're probably going to hear a lot about this on the show. That said, because it's been such a heavy hour, I'm doubling my efforts to wrap up here on something a bit more lighthearted. Grammar nerds are feuding. And I'm not a grammar nerd, but I'm grammar nerd curious. Grammar rules fascinate me, and I like to know the rules, so that when I write, I don't sound uneducated, and so people read what I write. Because bad grammar can be really distracting when you're reading something, to say the least. What's this grammar nerd fight about? It's It's Kamala Harris and how to use an apostrophe in possession from a grammar perspective with her last name, because it ends with an S. And the other problem is her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. It ends with a Z, but that's similar to ending with an S. So the fight is over where the apostrophe goes. When you're saying, say, Kamala Harris's campaign. Well, I just said it. Is it Harris's, or is it Kamala Harris apostrophe campaign, which is also an acceptable style? Well, the Associated Press is here to settle this grammar nerd fight. This bubbled up on Twitter about a week ago, and it's just been brewing and brewing and brewing. And the Associated Press says, according to their style book, use only an apostrophe for singular proper names ending in S. Like Charles Dickens' apostrophe novels, Hercules' labors, Jesus' life, anything that ends with an S. But not everybody agrees. So that's the Associated Press style book. The debate itself, though, is bubbling up because other grammar experts, even professors who teach grammar in a really intense college writing class, say, no, the other one is acceptable. So how do you choose? It's kind of up to you and what sounds better. So Harris apostrophe or Harris apostrophe S, Harris's, either one, AP says, is grammatically correct. They have their preference, but you can use whichever one you choose. So